Hey there, it's Phil Ratcliffe with Rebel Financial, and thanks for tuning in. A little bit of change up. Me and Tony have been switching things up, but this week we have a great episode. We have Nadia Kasvin in from Us Together, and I think we're going to learn a lot about a subject that probably a lot of us don't know enough about. So, Nadia, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time to educate us about this. So,
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your background. So you're a refugee yourself. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about your story and how it led you to where you are and everything that you do.
Well, I and my family came here to the United States almost 26 years ago. We came as refugees from Ukraine, and I worked for many years in a sector, assisting refugees and immigrants to start and rebuild their lives here. And so in 2003, I and my friend and my husband, all of us former refugees in this country, decided to start our own organization, Us Together. And really that came from observing some gaps in services, but also wanting to provide services from a different perspective, from perspective of somebody who actually was on the journey and understands what it takes to leave your home and come to a new country and start rebuilding your life.
Yeah.
And that's how we continue to provide services. You know, more than 80% of our staff are former refugees and immigrants. Majority of our board are foreign-born. And and we continue to have this perspective and very much embedded in a community, which helps us to identify the needs and develop new programs.
That's awesome. So very much kind of a pay it forward
Absolutely.
type mentality, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because nobody succeeds on their own. I truly believe that.
I agree.
Right?
Obama took a lot of heat for that, right?
Well, we would not be able to succeed if we didn't have people around us who supported us, who helped us, who gave us a hand up, and allowed us to fulfill our potential. And my family has been very successful here in this country, and I want to make sure that everybody who comes after us
That's awesome.
has the same opportunities.
Well, pretty much everyone here is an immigrant some way or
Right,
another, right?
absolutely.
Even though a lot of people don't choose to see it that way anymore. So, I'm just curious, what brought you to Columbus? You know,
My husband was offered an opportunity here, and we were ready to explore the country. And we were resettled initially in Portland, Oregon, and then we spent 2.5 years there, and then moved to Columbus in 1996.
It's a big change, right? You went
Yeah,
from good climate to
Right.
very varying climate, but you got to follow opportunity, right?
It's not just that. You know, in Portland we actually had family, and in Columbus we didn't have anybody. We didn't know. We didn't know
started over
anybody.
twice.
Right, absolutely. And this is what we call secondary migration. You know, when the first migration is that you go to the designated city. And then secondary migration is within the United States. And many of our clients, and actually a lot of people who are former refugees and immigrants here in Columbus, came to Columbus through secondary migration, not through primary migration. Majority of our Somali community, majority of our ethnic Nepalis from Bhutan community, they were resettled somewhere else, and then chose to come to Columbus, which I think is a compliment to the city.
Yeah, right? Columbus is up and coming, and it is impressive that it's a little bit more diverse, it's a little bit more service-oriented, and probably one of the only liberal havens in Ohio, right?
But I have to say that we talk a lot about Columbus, but it's not just Columbus. I mean, the whole Franklin County, with all of its municipalities, welcomed refugees and immigrants. Have refugees and immigrants as residents, contributing to economy of all of those different municipalities. So it's not just Columbus. I mean, we're in Gahanna, and Gahanna is one of the most diverse places in Franklin County, right?
Whitehall and Dublin, and it's interesting because I do so much like out of the state and what's out, and so it's like nobody knows any of the smaller municipalities. So you just say Columbus, right? So like I guess I've just gotten used to thinking that. even though all these smaller cities, we're just all Columbus, right? But yeah, you're right. It does take more than just the central, bigger government, right, around here to do it.
And local governments are essential in promoting, being welcoming and openness and allowing people to come and succeed and contribute.
Sure, and it is a lot of the community, and I guess the representation that comes from the community that a lot of times has the biggest impact on people's lives, even though it's always the big federal government that gets all the press. All right. So what is Us Together, and what services do you guys provide in terms of helping people?
Well, we're a statewide organization. We're the only statewide organization providing integration services to refugees and immigrants. And so we have offices in Columbus, Cleveland, and Toledo.
Wow, that's a lot.
And,
you guys have grown and spread pretty well.
And what is integration services? I mean, that's our ultimate goal, right?
Sure.
Is that people are integrated and they become contributing members of the society, and they feel at home, right? They're building a home here. And so we do it through social integration, economic integration, civic integration, and linguistic integration. Well, linguistic integration is the easiest to explain, right?
Yes.
We help people to learn English, and so we have specialized classes to prepare people for citizenship and for employment. We also have interpreter services, which is our social enterprise. Through our interpreter services, we support services to the most vulnerable population. So whatever income we earn on our interpreter services, we pour it back to provide services to the most vulnerable. And so our interpreter services, we have probably close to 300 interpreters speaking 76 different languages. And we provide that statewide. We have telephonic, we have video interpreting, we have face-to-face interpreting, specializing in social, education, medical, legal. So that's
pretty significant. Because when you look at your core staff that you have on your website or what, so to just realize that you have that many people helping people is awesome. And I'm sure it spreads out even more with your volunteers and everything as well.
And so the learning language is a core element for success. But also we provide other integration services like social integration services, helping with some basic needs. For example, when we are a designated organization to provide refugee resettlement in Columbus, Cleveland, and Toledo, and so we work with our national partner, HIAS, and with U.S. Department of State to resettle refugees in Ohio. Specifically,
areas.
We know when they're coming. It's very controlled process, and so through that social integration, right, we provide those initial basic services. Meeting them at the airport, helping them to get an apartment.
And your 2015 guide, how those people said, there were people at the airport and we felt welcome, etc. And so
for the first 3 months, making sure that they are settled, that they have the most immediate needs met, that kids are in school, that they're linked to services, that they're starting working on their employment, on their education, and then it continues, right? And we then identify barriers that people might have to successful self-sufficiency. And so we then add other services, for example, victims of crime services, victims of sexual assault and gender-based violence. People who experience that would have additional barriers, and trauma, and services for survivors of torture. 45% of all refugees, according to United Nations, experience torture as part of having that refugee experience, and so we provide those services to help people move on, but also empowering people. We have women empowerment program, we have refugee parents empowerment program, so that parents understand how school system works and continue to be involved in their kids' lives, because I think that's the most tragic thing when parents check out of their kids' lives, right? And so I know that myself, I went through that experience. Our child was 6 years old when we came here. And so I want to make sure that parents, are empowered to continue parenting, but also then economic integration, which is very important, kind of moving people towards that self-sufficiency, finding employment, providing financial literacy, and helping them to figure out what's their career path is going to be here. And I think kind of one of the most important thing that we shouldn't forget is civic integration.
Sure.
Right? Understanding how government works, understanding, appreciating, and adopting American values.
So when refugees come over, or say they apply for asylum or whatso, is that a permanent integration always? Or is it a certain period of time? Because I have heard, like, if certain people don't do things within a certain period of time or whatso, sometimes they can be deported back or whatso, versus like trying to get them integrated, like you said. Yeah. Like, what is the actual standard of that?
Right.
For those
and there's
who
really, different standards for different immigration statuses.
Yeah.
And really, the easiest way to describe is that all of us in this country who are not born and who are not citizens yet, we're considered alien.
Yeah.
And that this is the big umbrella, right? So we're all aliens, and then there are two big subgroups: those who are non-immigrant aliens, those who come through visas like student visa, a work visa, business visa, tourist visa. Why we call them non-immigrants? Because the intent is to come for a short period of time and leave.
Okay.
And then there's a big group of immigrants. It doesn't matter whether it's documented or not documented. It's all about the intent.
Sure.
The intent is to stay here and make it your permanent home.
Yes.
And then under that big group, there are so many different subdivisions, right?
Yeah.
Documented immigrants, non-documented immigrants. And within that big documented immigrants, in another subgroup, we have refugees, we have asylum seekers, right? We have those who received humanitarian parole, those who received temporary protection status. And so really refugee is a separate legal immigration status.
Okay.
And the process are very different than those who seek asylum.
Okay.
Right? All the processing for refugees happens overseas. Somebody is outside of the United States and applies for a refugee status. And usually it takes only 1% of all refugees would ever be resettled. And
is that out of all countries or just to the United States? All.
And actually, I have to say that it's less than 1%. I recently talked to somebody who works on this issue within United Nations High Commission on Refugees, and I was told that with decrease of numbers of people entering and accepted to a refugee resettlement program, it's probably 1/3 of 1%.
Wow.
So it's less. It's much less than 1%.
So where do all the other people go?
Well, they stay where they are, or they go back, and that's really how United Nations High Commission on Refugee looks at this whole phenomenon. We, as a world, face humanitarian crisis. Yeah. Right. So. The refugee definition was established by Refugee Convention 1954, and as a result of what happened at World War II, that was mass migration of people, and people were dislocated and
turned away.
Right, and so and it produced a lot of refugees. Well, we now surpassed that number. So right now, as a world, we have more people who are dislocated, and we have more people who are refugees. So there are more than 60 million people around the world who had to flee from their homes and find refuge and safety in a different country. And out of those 60 million, about 25 million who are registered with United Nations High Commission on Refugees for refugee status. So they have refugee status with UN. It doesn't mean that they would have that refugee status with the United States.
Sure.
In order to do that, they have to apply to U.S. refugee program and go through a lot of interviews and and verifying their story of persecution, because refugee status is based on only persecution. It's not about economic hardship. It's not about natural disaster. It's about persecution. So people have to prove that they've been persecuted based on religion, nationality, race, political opinion, and belonging to a certain group. And I mean nationality, ethnic background, and only those 5 reasons, and that they were persecuted in their country of origin, and that they cannot go back there for the fear. Because they fear for their lives. That the definition of refugee status. So it all happens outside the United States. With asylum seekers have to come to the country, step on U.S. soil, in order then to ask for asylum, basically claiming the same thing, that they've been persecuted.
They just got there.
Yeah, and then they cannot go back.
Gotcha. Okay. So, what do you think is the main impediment to, like, not allowing more than 1% of those people to come to developed countries where they could have another start? There would so.
Well, there's so many different reasons. For some countries, it's economic consideration, right, and social consideration. How many people we can absorb? How do we have resources to absorb new people? For some countries, it's political consideration.
Sure.
For some countries, it's it's a moral consideration.
Yeah.
For some, it's all together. And really, there are so many different reasons. But it's United States has always been the leader in refugee resettlement, and we have our own very well established refugee program. And throughout it was established in the 70s, and throughout the years we resettled on average 70,000 people a year.
Wow.
And this year we hope to resettle 30,000 refugees as a country, which is a much lower number. But other countries participate in that effort as well. Canada has a very successful refugee resettlement program. Germany is expanding its refugee program, so they accepted migrants who came in and then applied for asylum. But in addition to that, they also are expanding their refugee resettlement program. And many other countries actually are looking at this model of refugee resettlement program, when it's a controlled process, when all the processing happens before they actually enter the country, when people can be interviewed and their story could be verified, and all the insurances and background checks and security checks and medical checks are done before people come in. So there is a certain control over the process, and then when people come in, we don't have to deal with the legal immigration status. We just help them to start rebuilding their lives immediately as soon as we meet them at the airport.
So from your experience, from people that run organizations like you all over the country, are you like at capacity, or could you handle more if they would let more people in?
We can definitely handle more.
So the bottleneck is not the integration into the communities, it's the more national letting people in general. And
every year, President of the country makes determination in consultation with State Department and with Congress, makes determination how many people we will allow to come as refugees, which regions, which countries, which ethnic and religious backgrounds. All of that is very specified, and based on that determination, then people are interviewed and approved or not approved for refugee status.
It's interesting to me because I feel like the bottleneck should be you guys. It's like how many people does the community want, and could you handle? And then it would be the government's responsibility to provide the services to let that many people in.
Yeah. And
you
we
know?
take and
to
we,
help people, right?
and
Yeah.
we
It's our
really
country. Yeah.
you know, organizations that do refugee settlement services, we
Mhm.
take it very seriously. We look at, can community handle to resettle additional 100 people?
Sure.
Right?
Because you don't want to turn people
because
against you, right? If it was too much,
because
right?
this kind
Yeah.
of a numbers
Yeah.
what we are talking about,
Mhm.
right? So at the peak of success of our agency refugee resettlement program, we resettled about 1,300 refugees around the state. Could a
In
higher,
1 year.
in 1 year. Could
Out
a
of
higher,
like 1.6 million in Franklin County, right? So it's like minuscule.
Yes, absolutely. And so now we are doing much less than that,
Mhm.
right? So we probably will resettle, 350, maybe 400
So down to
people
about a third.
around
Yeah.
the state.
Yeah.
And so can Columbus handle 200, 250 people additional when we have
sure.
so
Yeah.
many job openings, availability, when community actually developed through years. Community developed capacity,
Yeah.
community developed resources to handle much bigger number, and especially with Columbus. Columbus is the only city, and I would say probably Central Ohio overall, municipalities in Central Ohio is the only place in Ohio which did not lose population.
Yes.
We gained
Yeah.
population,
For sure.
right? And so for many other municipalities, it's who lost population. It's also the way of making sure that communities are not dying. Communities
Sure.
continue to attract
Yes. You need good
new
demographics,
people,
right?
new talent, because that's important. We all want to attract new talent, and new talent that we want to attract
Sure.
appreciates diversity, because new talent, it's young people, and they grew up in the age where we started really appreciating diversity in our country,
Yes, for sure.
understand the impact or positive impact of diversity.
So do you find that a lot of the people that you help, especially since it's a lot more countries now, are have like a common mindset to you? Like once they make it, they're willing to like pay it forward and help new people that are coming over as well too? Because that seems to me is the more people that you build up that community, if they were willing to do that, it would only be easier and easier to help more people, because you got more people that are willing to help or host a family to get them on their feet or something like that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's how also we build local capacity to provide assistance to more people through communities that are already established here.
Yeah.
Right. So community help their own members. Communities start their own ethnic-based organizations to support those who come with additional barriers that only community can assist with.
Okay.
And when new refugees and immigrants come to the community, they tend to stay within community at least for initial period of time while they orient themselves, while they figure out transportation, and we all rely on help of other people, right?
Sure.
So when somebody comes here, they don't have a car.
Yeah.
Right? They need to find a job first and save money to be able to get transportation. Columbus is built for for cars, right?
Yeah.
So
no,
you
mass
have to
transit,
have
yeah.
a car to be able to be independent
Sure.
and mobile. And so somebody in the community would provide transportation, or a volunteer from our organization would provide transportation. For some of the appointments, our organization provides transportation. We have two very old vans.
So that could be a way somebody can help, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Two very old vans, and when we need to take people for appointment or for classes, then we provide that assistance as well.
Okay. So one last thing before we kind of wrap up. I think one of the things that's a misconception that a lot of people have is that when you do things like this or help people like that, you're just giving, or people are giving up things. But what is the benefits to the community and the economic impact kind of in the long term of welcoming immigrants and refugees into your community?
Well, I always say that telling a story of hardship and persecution is not telling the whole story.
Yeah.
This is not the whole story. It's part of the story. So the journey and experiences, and sometimes horrific experiences people had on their journey to United States, is just a part of it.
Yeah.
And then there is another journey here, resettling here, integrating, learning, figuring out your life, making it your home, and eventually succeeding.
Sure.
And everybody defines success differently, but what we observe in our communities of refugees and immigrants that we work with is that people become self-sufficient very, very quickly.
Wow.
We have employment program, fast track employment program, and through that employment program, close to 85% of our participants become self-sufficient within 4 to 6 months after arrival.
That's amazing.
After arrival,
Yeah.
right? Whether they already gained any English language skills or not, we are assisting them with jobs, and they become employed, and they become contributing members. This is just entry-level jobs, right?
Sure.
But then we know how many people are starting their own businesses. Actually, we did a study in 2015 and published a report on impact of refugees here in Central Ohio. And what we learned is that refugees are twice more likely to start businesses that are those who are born in this country.
Wow.
Right? And we were able to dispel many myths through that study. Like, for example, education background. On average, educational background of a refugee is very similar to educational background of somebody who was born in Central Ohio.
Awesome.
Right?
Yeah,
And people enter jobs, and people are self-sufficient, and those who start businesses create jobs for other people, right?
Yeah.
So my husband has a business, and he has employees. All of them are Americans, right? And he himself came here as a refugee. Our organization, us together, we have 45 people. So we created jobs for 45 people, and assist close to 300 interpreters to have income, right?
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
so, and it's just this kind of example, right? But so how many people opened restaurants, financial business services, insurances, IT businesses.
Yeah.
There's a whole spectrum of different businesses that you can find that are owned by former refugees and immigrants.
I did see that it was something I guess it was 2015 numbers, so it's been a while, but it was like 16,000 some refugees, but from the businesses of all of them together, they employed like 120 some thousand people.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's taken, I don't know the exact number, but it looked like something between 20 or 50 million dollars to help them, but the economic impact is in the billions in the back.
Absolutely.
And so the return on the investment beyond humanitarian is huge.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's in addition to the total economic impact is in billions, right? Because through the taxes that we pay, through the stuff that we buy, right? and it is part of local economy.
Yeah. And
So
our
it's a
unemployment is
contribution.
lower than just about anywhere in the world,
Right.
so it's not like people took anybody else's jobs. Or
Right.
anything
No,
like that
and
either.
we
Yeah.
actually have employers who call us and they ask to help them to find reliable employees because of such a low unemployment rate here, and our businesses are growing, and we're bringing more businesses to Central Ohio, and they need people.
And sometimes some of the perspectives that I've seen from people that come from other countries, their work ethic sometimes is better, because some people are like, I don't want to do this job, and I need money, so I'll do it, versus somebody that's like thankful to have a job, shows up all the time and busts their butt, even if their culture's a little bit. I'm just saying, sometimes there is that. I mean, like, I've had a lot of people that I know that run different types of businesses, and like, it's very hard to find people And I've had a couple people that I know that run lawn care businesses that like have sold their stuff and like quit because they can't find reliable people to work. And it's unfortunate that we're trying to slam down so much on immigration when it makes us all better. You
well,
know,
I can't judge other people's attitude, but what I can say based on my own experiences and people that we serve is that there's certainly a huge drive for those who are new to the country. And it's been proven through history.
Yeah.
Those who came 200 years ago and 150 years ago and 100 years ago and come in now, there is a drive to succeed.
Yeah.
Drive to create better life for their children. That's the American story.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, let's go back to anybody and we can see that immigration story and how that first generation, really worked so hard to provide and to move forward and move up in this world. And I think anybody can look back and find that story in their own family history.
Yep, I agree. So, obviously people can find you online. When I Googled you, everything came up real good. But I really enjoyed looking through your Facebook page, and you post a lot of things, and you were telling me about an event that's coming up at the zoo at the African Cultural Center for Taste of Columbus. So tell us a little bit about that and how people can get tickets or come check it out.
Right, please come and join us in our celebration. This is our annual event, and it is Taste of Columbus. We will celebrate our 45th anniversary of this event. We actually, for us together, it's the second year, but for 43 years, this event was put together by Columbus International Program, which merged with us together, and now we have international program. And really, this is the event to showcase the African culture and African cuisine, and celebrate with us. And we're going to do it in an amazing event, African event space at the Columbus Zoo. We will have entertainment, and we will have food. And we just want to try something different, right? And come over and join us and experience this different cultures with us. And we would be happy to share all our experiences with you, and also our international programming and our travels. We just recently had a trip to Rwanda, and we have amazing pictures from there and stories, and we would welcome everybody to come in.
That's awesome. Well, check them out on Facebook. We've already tagged their websites, their social media, but I really did like a lot of those. I did find the link to Highest that you had mentioned earlier, and I actually watched that video explaining of why a lot of the international law was created after we turned away so many of the Jewish community during World War II. And so it's important that we don't lose sight of that with what we do, because pretty much most of us here, unless you're American Indian, are an immigrant, and I guess over 10,000 years ago they were too. But anyways, thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for being here, Nadia, and everything that you guys do to keep paying it forward, to making us a vibrant, strong community. So, hope you guys are having a great week, a good start to the summer. We'll be off next week for 4th of July, so enjoy your independence, and the week after we will be back with Allison Harrison from the Diversity Chamber of Central Ohio. So have a great weekend, and thanks so much for sharing some of your time with us.